Auto Accident Help Desk.
Welcome to Auto Accident Help Desk. We're a free service and we're open 24/7. If you or someone you know has been injured in a motor vehicle accident and do not have an attorney, call Auto Accident Help Desk right now for a free consultation. At the help desk is my colleague, Justin. Tell us more about the callers.
Leah, thanks for having me. We're getting calls for truck, motorcycle, and most of all, car accidents. If you or someone you know was injured in an accident and were not at fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live professional who will answer your questions and explain how much your case may be worth.
Folks, don't worry about your medical bills, lost wages, and pain. Call Auto Accident Help Desk right now.
Call 800-706-6060. 800-706-6060. 800-706-6060.
Auto Accident Help Desk.
Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. My guest, based in Boston, just prior to recording, is telling me he's like a bit of Irish in him, which is always good to hear, but he's yet to visit, but we'd be looking out for him. So please welcome Jon Paul Crimi today.
Thanks for having me, Roy. I'm not based in Boston. I'm in Oregon now. I grew up in Boston.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay. And then I moved when I was 23 to Los Angeles, and I lived there for a good 23 years, and now I'm in Oregon for the last 8.
Okay. So I suppose you can kind of tell us, I mean, you've moved around, but then, I mean, I know you're, the breathwork and everything, but you can kind of tell us your career and how you got into this.
Sure. It was very unexpected. The actor Matthew Perry from the show Friends, he was a very close, dear friend of mine. And someone had taken him to a healer guy, and he was telling me about the session. And I thought, come on, dude, like that sounds ridiculous. That's crazy. But I was kind of open-minded because I had just met Tony Robbins, and I had had an incredible experience at the Tony Robbins seminar. And so Matthew said, well, you're my only friend that would do this. And so I bought you a session with this guy. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll try it. Why not? Whatever. I got nothing to lose. So I went and I did this session, and it was a different kind of breathing technique than what the style that I teach today. But I had an experience that was really profound and powerful. And so what that did was it sent me down this rabbit hole of like, what else is out there? And a couple people who didn't know each other, 2 different people, said, you need to go try breathwork. And I was like, what is breathwork? And I think, your listeners may or may not know, but breathwork is an umbrella term, right? It's like saying fitness. You said, I do fitness, Roy. And you'd be like, wait, what do you do? Do you do, weightlifting or soul cycle? What kind of fitness do you do? So there's this misconception in the breathwork world, because somebody will do box breathing and they'll call it breathwork, or somebody will do Wim Hof breathing and they'll call it breathwork. And there's all these different types of techniques. And so the technique that I mainly teach, that I focus on, I know all the techniques. I've done them all. They're all tremendous. Most of them are through the nose to calm you down, to calm the parasympathetic, to regulate you and help you calm down if you're having anxiety or whatever. My technique is very different. It's through the mouth. And you go, oh my God, I thought you're supposed to breathe through the nose. Yes, most of the time you are supposed to breathe through the nose. But like I always say, 30 minutes of active mouth breathing into the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, to clear out your stress, your anxiety, your trauma, your generational trauma, is totally worth it. So I went to this class and I did this breath work, this circular breath work, or conscious connected breath work, it's called. And I had an experience like I'd never had in my life. I cried in a way that I never cried. I let go of things. I felt clear. I felt lighter. My brain turned off in a way that I was always trying to turn it off with alcohol and sometimes drugs. And I just felt amazing. And I came home and my wife was like, oh my God, you look like a different person. And I said, I know, I did this thing and it was so wild. And I didn't love the class. I didn't like the music of the teacher or any of the stuff. I thought it was weird and woo-woo and new agey and not my style. I'm from Boston, right? Like, you don't blame your messy life on Mercury in retrograde. Your life's a mess because you made it that way. Stop blaming it on the moon cycle, right? That's kind of how I grew up. And so it's just not me at the time. And so I started doing this breath work on my own. I'd make a playlist and I'd breathe and I'd clear out all this stuff. And then I started doing it every morning. And people around me noticed, like clients, friends. I was a celebrity trainer at the time and personal trainer in the gym. And people started going, are you medicated all of a sudden? Like, why are you so present? Why are you so happy? What's going on? And I said, "Oh, I'm doing this weird breathing thing." And they're like, "What is it?" And I said, they would say, "Show me." And I'd show a client or a friend, and they'd have this tremendous experience. And I had this realization early on in one of my own sessions, which was, why doesn't everybody know about this? This is 15 years ago. There was no Wim Hof. There was no Vogue magazine talking breathwork is the new yoga. None of that stuff was out there. You could barely find anything on the internet 15 years ago. And I thought, why doesn't everybody know about this? And I realized it's been kind of kept in these new age woo-woo circles. And if somebody did this Tony Robbins style with energy and like a trainer and cool music, and they put some science in there, they'd probably have hundreds of people in the room, maybe thousands of people in the room. That's what I had this epiphany. And I started doing it in that way. I started teaching it in that way. This woman asked me to do a class. I had never done a class before. And she said, "Would you do a class at my studio?" And I don't know, I've never done a class. And she said, "Come on, you'd be great." So I invited some of my friends, and Matthew Perry, the actor, he came and he said, "Jon Paul, this is your gift. This is what you're supposed to be doing." And I said, "Really? The breathwork thing?" Because it was just, something I was doing at the time. It wasn't really where I wanted to take my life. I still wanted a TV show at the time. I was writing movies and TV shows. And he said, "Nope, this is your gift." And a couple years later, the class was packed and sold out. And Matthew came to that class and he said, I told you this was your gift." And so I'm really grateful to him for encouraging this whole journey that I've been on for the last 15 years, because without him, it doesn't happen, And so it's been quite a ride, and it's been an incredible journey. And I love, sharing it with people. And about 9 years ago, I started teaching other people how to teach it. People kept asking me to, "Hey, would you show me how to teach this? I want to teach this." So I started my teacher trainings about 9 years ago, and I also started doing it online. This was way before COVID. And I knew that this would work online because, you only need to watch for the first 10 minutes. I do a demonstration. I show you the technique. I break everything down. I tell you the things that are going to happen to prepare you to know that even though some weird stuff is going to happen in your body, that's totally normal. You're safe. I tell people, listen, there are 0 reported incidences of anything bad happening during this type of breath work. I've been teaching it for 15 years. Nothing bad's ever happened. But I want to prepare people properly because the experience is a lot more intense than people are expecting. It's much more intense than people are expecting. And even though I do my best to prepare people properly, they still don't expect it. So the first 10 minutes, I do a demonstration. I lay down, I do a demonstration. And then you lay down and you close your eyes and you have your, speakers on or your headphones on. And it's all about the audio from that point on. So I knew this would work online, and I wanted to share it with people all over the world. And that's what I've done. I've been doing this online for the last, 9 years. And there was this full circle moment last year when Tony Robbins people, reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we heard you're amazing at breathwork, and we'd like to have you come to our Life Mastery Seminar." And I got to do this online in a Tony Robbins Life Mastery Seminar for like 3,500 people. And that was this amazing full circle moment, because I'm like, did you know that like Tony is part of my story? Like I met him and he invited me to a seminar and it changed my life. And then I found breathwork right after that. So this was this beautiful full circle moment. And I got to do a class also for this company called Unity in Switzerland last year. It was 900 people in person. So I think it's the largest in-person circular breathwork class that's ever been done. And so it's been an amazing journey of sharing this with people. And now I train other people how to do it, and then they go out and help people. And I've certified over 3,000 people in my style of, leading this type of breath work.
Excellent. Just because, a lot of people would know of Matthew Perry, and sorry to hear about your friend, but like, was he had the same kind of humor that people were known, or was that his acting? Was that his kind of style?
I would say that was his humor and then some, like, maybe a little more R-rated in real life with a guy friend like me, right? So it's like Chandler with but but even better.
Brilliant. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic that you're, training more people, because, I mean, I've tried a lot of different ones. I've actually met Wim Hof. I done it in Jamaica. They filled the jacuzzi with ice and done it. But I've done the breathwork with him. So we've done the ice baths as well. And yeah, very interesting. I've tried loads of different ones, but I've done it in I don't know how many were there. It was at A-Fest or whatever. And sometimes people, they react like they've realized, something has really bad happened to them. And, there's kind of releasing stuff, but then they go really bad. So when that happens to somebody that's on their own, like, that's my fear. Like, I know you get the claw as well. I mean, that happened to me the first time. I was like, Jesus, what's going on? Your hands are just locking. So maybe touch on the locking up first, and then we go into the kind of more deeper one.
Yeah, sure. These are great points that you're bringing up, right? So these claws, this is called tetany, is the scientific term for it. It's when your hands cramp up like this, and sometimes your jaw can get really tight and you can't move your mouth. That happens to people too. When I first started doing breathwork 15 years ago, I was asking these different teachers that I was working with, like, what causes this tetany? And they would give me these answers like, oh, it's the moon. It's the you're detoxing off weed. I'm like, I haven't smoked weed in 12 years. I'm not, whatever. And so it's not that. And so I wanted the science. I want the science. Like, I'm a trainer at the time, and I want the science behind it. And I was doing a class twice a week at the studio, and it was sold out, and people were packed in like sardines in this room. And I saw this common thread, between certain people who were getting more tetany than others. And it looked like they were pushing the exhale much harder. So the technique is shh, shh, and they're going shh, 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 and they're pushing the exhale a lot faster, a lot harder. And they're not really inhaling as much, and they're not really relaxing, because you want to go and relax that exhale. You don't want to push it. The work is done on the inhales, and a lot of people think because I'm working on the inhale, I have to work on the exhale, or they just get going so fast and they get into this state where they can't slow themselves down. And so when you breathe that fast, you are technically hyperventilating, and you're not taking in the oxygen properly. Oxygen binds to CO2, and then it absorbs into our bloodstream. But when you're breathing that fast and pushing that exhale, it's not giving the CO2 a chance to bind to the oxygen and absorb into the bloodstream. And that's what's causing the cramping. I brought this health and science researcher in from Harvard, and I said, I have this feeling these people around the room, they're pushing the exhale harder. And so we did some research on it, and that's what we discovered. So I made a YouTube video about it years ago, and several people have copied it since, but I feel like I was the first to discover that, like, this is the real reason that this tetany happens, is that you're pushing the exhale too hard. So if you can just simply stop, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and pause a little bit. No long Wim Hof breath holds. You don't want to combine long breath holds with circular breath work. And there's a reason for that we could get into, but it's not always safe, because when you do Wim Hof, you do 30 breaths in and out, and then you hold, your brain starts to go, come on, Roy, take a breath. Come on. All right, enough. This has been long enough, right? It's fighting you, and it's telling you to take a breath. And then finally you go, and you take the breath. But when you do 30 minutes of conscious connected mouth breathing, your brain doesn't send that same message saying, take a breath, take a breath. And so people can hold their breath until they pass out or have a seizure. Now, I've never had that happen in a class because I don't allow that, but you can do a short breath hold, say a minute or so, and bring yourself back if you've got an instructor they're bringing back. I don't recommend this for new people. I do it sometimes in an advanced class that I teach. And that will build up the CO2, because when you're holding your breath, you're building up CO2, right? When you're doing circular breath work, you're throwing off CO2. So they're opposites. So you could be doing circular breath work and then close your mouth, breathe through your nose, do a little bit of a breath hold, and that will build the CO2 back up, and that will take care of the tetany. So what I started to do was empower people with that technique online, because I was the first to teach this online that I know of. And I'd say, listen, if you get a cramp, if you get uncomfortable, if you're freaking out, just close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and pause a little bit in between those breaths, and that'll bring you back. And now I say that in my classes in person, because the safer someone feels, the more that they feel in control and that they can pull it back anytime they want, the deeper they can go. The deeper they can let go. And so with that said, let's touch on the other thing that you talked about, which is some type of trauma coming up, right? Some heavy trauma that happened, say, when they were young, and it came up during the breathwork. Now, the first thing I say is the breathwork didn't put that trauma there. The trauma was already there, right? It was already there before you did the breathwork. The breathwork is just showing you that it's there and it needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, if it wasn't a trauma that didn't need to be dealt with, it wouldn't be coming up. It wouldn't come up at all. If it wasn't something that was already integrated and healed, it wouldn't even come up. So it needs to be released. It needs to be integrated and healed. Some people are freaked out because they're like, oh my God, I thought I had pushed that down into some, I thought I had gotten rid of that. I'd never thought about that again. Like, no, you just pushed it down inside your body, inside your nervous system. And now it's eating away at you from the inside out, destroying your health. If you don't think that, these things, these things that you haven't dealt with can affect your health, then go find my eyebrows. Because my eyebrows are gone and I have alopecia, right? Which is brought on by emotional stress, emotional trauma. So that emotional trauma, that emotional stress made all my hair fall out. It gave me an autoimmune disorder. So emotional stress, emotional trauma will affect your health in negative ways, cancer, heart disease, all these different things. So the breath work is showing people, oh, hey, this trauma just came up and it needs to be integrated. It needs to be healed. Whether you do that through breathwork sessions, or I also recommend, having a therapist to go process that stuff with as well. I say on my website and all my class marketing and stuff, I say breathwork is like 20 years of therapy without saying a word. And I got that because so many of my students kept saying this to me after classes. They'd come up to me like, oh my God, that felt like 20 years of therapy. Oh my God. And so I was like, I'm going to start putting that on my marketing. And I thought therapists were going to get really pissed off at that. Ironically, therapists are the people who send me the most clients, the most students. They just do, because the thing comes up, the trauma comes up that they have locked away, and now they're ready to deal with it. Now they're ready to integrate it and talk about it. And so the therapist is going to help them talk about it and process it. One of the biggest things I hear is, I'm pointing to my head, I thought I did all the work. I did the therapy. I did the 12-step. I did the toning. I did this. I thought I did it. Well, yeah, you thought. It's in the language. It's up in your head. You did all the work up in your head. But there's this other stuff in your nervous system, in your body, that hasn't been dealt with. It's living in that nervous system. So when you lay down and you start doing this type of breath work and you breathe into that nervous system, that sympathetic stuff, all those issues, all the stuff is going to start coming up and being integrated.
And how long are the sessions?
I would say, my class is about an hour and 15 minutes. If you're new to it, you're going to need a little more time to recover. You're going to need a little more time. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and she said, I wish I could have laid on the floor for, another hour and just enjoyed the peace that I was feeling after the breath work. And I was like, you should do that. Like, that's what, we want that peace. We're seeking that peace, that quiet. So allow that, give yourself the time and the space for it. A lot of schedules don't allow for that, but I would say at least an hour to an hour and 15 minutes.
And like if somebody's at home and they've got the laptop, is there a difference when, like, say they have the earphones, or if they just lie down and they're just listening? Does the sound, does it work better with earphones in?
That's a great question. I think it works better with earphones, with headphones. You're isolating it more. You're isolating out the rest of the world. You're canceling out the rest of the world, and you get to really disappear. There is a bit of an altered state element to this type of breath work. Some people call it psychedelic breath work, and it does put you in a different state. I've been sober, we were talking about this, 26 years now, and it's pretty incredible. There's a thing that can happen during this type of breath work called transient hypofrontality. Part of the prefrontal cortex of my brain can turn down, or sometimes it feels like it turns off in this incredible way. And that's the area of my brain where the ego lives, where the critic lives, right? That's always talking to me, talking shit to me half the time, right? You're not enough. You're not smart enough. You're not thin enough. You're not rich enough. You're not hairy enough, right? I'm saying this because I have no hair if you're listening and not watching. But, so to turn that critic off for an hour or two or whatever is incredible. That's what I was always trying to do with alcohol and drugs. So it feels amazing. And then I go, what it does for me is it turns off my head and moves me into my heart. And so, I'll joke, I have a shirt that says, "I'm sorry for what I said before breath work." So I have a fight with my wife, who I love very dearly. And then I'm mad. I want to be right. I'm not going to talk to her for the next year in my head. I'm going to shun her with my silence for a year. And then I lay down and I do some breath work. And then I let go, because I realized this thing that I was holding on to, my idea of I'm right about this, is so stupid and small in the big picture, which is that I love my wife and that I just want to be happy. I don't need to be right. I need to be happy. And so I go down and apologize and I say, I'm sorry. And instead of, not talking to her for the next year, which I wouldn't do, I'm joking. But, people are really big on the psychedelics these days, the ayahuasca and the microdosing and the ibogaine and all the different things. And they'll ask me about the breathwork, because breathwork produces the same results. There was just a study out of London where it said it literally produces the same exact results as doing these psychedelics, this ayahuasca and these psychedelics. It's incredible, this scientific study that they did. And they'll say, okay, well, what's the difference? And I say, well, the biggest difference for me is I can't do ayahuasca and then go pick up my kids from school on a Tuesday afternoon, right? But I can
You have to empty the puke bucket first.
Yeah, exactly. I got to bring the puke bucket with me to school. But I can do breath work and then go pick up my kids from school. I can roll out of bed in the morning and just do breath work for 15 minutes and go into my day a happy, present person. And with these plant medicines, the power is in the plant, but with breath work, the power is in you. So for me personally, it's just a more realistic solution, a more realistic tool to my problem, which is me. I'm my problem, myself, my mind, my ego, this head of mine. And so it really helps with that. And I've also seen it work tremendously with people, who are struggling with different things, from alcoholism and addiction to, all these other issues of anxiety, stress, grief. It's tremendous for grief. And so it helps in real time. Everything out there that people are looking for, people want a quick fix, and nothing really is a quick fix, but this actually kind of is. Like, you're going to feel different in one session. You're going to feel something in one session. You're going to have some type of experience in a session. I don't know what that's going to be. It's different for everybody, and it's different every time you do it. So my class on Sunday morning, which is, live on Zoom, 9 a.m. California time, there's a 5-day replay afterwards after that class. And so you could do the live class. You don't have to do the live class. I have people that come from all over the world who just sign up and do the replay. But you can do the replay 5 times and have a different experience every time. You can have 5 different experiences, literally from the same class. It's a recording, because you're kind of stripping away the layers of things that you've built up over your heart, or, traumas that you've stored in your body. You're kind of pulling those away. And if you do it consistently and long enough, what you do is you clear out all this stuff from your life. And then eventually you just get current to what's going on right now today. You're not reacting out of old stories, old traumas, old things that have happened, which was what was happening to me. People used to say, Jon Paul, you're overreacting. all the time. You're overreacting. And I was like, what do you mean? That's the right reaction. And it wasn't. It was an overreaction to the situation because I was triggered from an old trauma. But I don't have that overreaction anymore. My reaction is appropriately sized for the situation. Sometimes the situation, I am pissed off. Like sometimes anger is the appropriate emotion for the situation. It doesn't mean I'm never going to get pissed off again, Roy. It doesn't mean I'm never going to get irritated. I'm dealing with people out there in the world, right? But it's appropriately sized for what's happening in the moment.
And I mean, obviously you're doing it a lot, but is it kind of once a week? How often do you recommend people to do it?
I recommend once a week, unless something happens and then, you're going through something more, serious, traumatic, whatever, you're going through grief, you can do it every day. For some people who have a lot of stuff that's happened to them, like myself, I had a lot of heavy trauma. I was stabbed and I was this and that and all these different things. I recommend doing it more often in the beginning and then sort of pulling back to a once a week schedule.
And curious with children, is there an age that you said, no, you shouldn't do it? What age?
Yeah. I don't think anyone under 14 should do it. And even then, it depends on the child if they have any sort of stuff, any trauma, anything going on. I've seen it work well for 14-year-olds with a lot of stuff, and I've seen it not work at all. So I generally, I don't usually have kids in my class. Sometimes parents want to bring their children, and I'll say, have you done the class? And they'll go, no. And I go, okay, first you need to come. You need to come to the class and experience it for yourself. And then you can be the best judge of if it's right for your kid or not. Right? I can't be the best judge. You need to know. You're going to know better than I am if it's appropriate for your son or your daughter. And also sometimes I swear because I'm from Boston and I can't help it.
And like, is there any studies done? Because, with the brain, with kind of say Alzheimer's, by doing regular breath work, could it help with that?
I don't know. I haven't seen that one on Alzheimer's. My dad has Alzheimer's, not Irish Alzheimer's, which is you forget everything but the resentments, but regular Alzheimer's, which is, it's heartbreaking. I'm watching him go through that now. I went back to see him last year and he didn't recognize me. And, it's sad. I don't know. I have been doing a bunch of research myself because after seeing that, I was like, wow, I know this is genetic and it's in my family. My dad has it really bad. My uncle and my aunt both had it really bad. And, so, I'm doing all the things like sauna and cold plunging and all the things they recommend for Alzheimer's and certain foods and all that stuff. But I haven't seen any research about this style of breath work yet. I have seen some research for PTSD with veterans with PTSD, and the research is really good. But I recommend getting an experienced facilitator, and ideally someone who has had PTSD themselves and then has worked on it through this modality. I've trained a couple guys, veterans with PTSD, and now they're out there doing it. So I think they would be better suited for it than me.
And I suppose if we kind of touch on that, because sometimes people, they go away, they do something and they do it once and then they go, oh, I see a financial opportunity here. And I think they can do more damage. So for those that go, how can they decipher who's good and who's not?
I'm so glad you asked this because that's what I'm seeing now. And it's like, I'm trying to not let it bother me, but you're right. It can do a bit of damage if they don't know how to hold the space properly. Right. Because I'm seeing, and I'll get an email from someone. I've never done breath work before, but if I take your teacher training and then I lead my own teacher trainings, and I'm like, excuse me, you're going to skip the part of actually working with people, one-on-one and helping people. You just want to go right to showing people how to do something you've never actually done yourself. I can't I can't even wrap my brain around that. Or I'll see someone who takes a breathwork teacher training, and then a year later they're leading their own breathwork teacher trainings. And I go, you haven't even had the experience, right? So my experience is that I've been doing this for 15 years and I've had sold out classes of hundreds of people for 15 years. So I've seen everything that can happen in a class, right? And I'm teaching from that place. And so I've been doing this online for 9 years. So I know how to do that. So I try to tell people, like, I'm teaching from that actual experience. What people are doing now is they're saying, oh, I have 20 years of experience in the wellness industry. What does that mean? You don't have 20 years of experience teaching breathwork. You've got 20 years of experience in the wellness industry. What they're really not saying is they were teaching yoga or hula hoop classes for 19 years. And I don't know, yeah, you're laughing, but I actually saw a woman who did this, who was a hula hoop instructor most of the time. And then she learned breathwork, and then she started teaching breathwork. And she said 20 years of experience in the wellness industry. So they're fudging their real experience, and they're not telling the truth about how much actual experience they have. Or I've had people go through my trainings and basically copy the training and then start doing it themselves and without the experience or the knowledge. And it's a shame. There's no breathwork police, and there's no barrier for entry. And so hopefully, you do your research and you find someone that is really good and they have actual experience. I may not be the guy for you. I'm not for everybody. My style is, kind of edgy, more so than some other breathwork teachers. I'm not as woo-woo or new agey. I try to bring the science to it, but there is some mysticism. There is some kind of elements in there that I like and that comes in naturally. But I might not be your teacher, but really do your research first.
So, with the 3,000 or whatever that you certified, how does the whole process look? Like, how long are you doing it? How much time? And then as you're going through it, you're doing your own classes. You might just kind of take us through it.
Sure. Well, so I have two different certifications. I have in person and then I have online. And so the in person, I'm only doing twice a year now in California. I was all over the place. I was in Switzerland doing it, and I was in Florida, all over the country. And I just said, I love doing this, but I love my kids more. I want to be home with my kids. They're never going to be these ages again. And I don't need to be the biggest breathwork teacher in the world at the expense of not seeing my kids, not watching my kids grow up. So I only do the in-persons twice a year, and I keep them pretty small. I try to keep them below, 20 people. So 16 people was the last couple trainings that I did. And then I've filmed those. I filmed them, I think 8 or 9 years ago. And then I refilmed them again and I rebooted it. So I've got a couple trainings filmed and in there. And then I've got all these questions and certifications. And then I do these Q&As with my students every couple months, like every 3 months. I do an online Q&A to support them. And there's no charge for that. That's included in the training that I do. And so I will certify you in person or online, but, and I've watched some of my students just go and become tremendous teachers, like leading these incredible classes and doing a fantastic job. And I tell people, because now one of the tactics that people are using is like, oh, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to re-traumatize somebody. And I said, I don't know about that. I think you can put somebody in a situation where they have some trauma come up, and then you need to know how to handle it. But they're using scare tactics to scare people into their trainings. And it's like there's a medium ground, there's a middle ground of like, yeah, you don't want to do a training that's online for $10 for a certification and then say you're certified. Because I saw one of those recently and I went, oh my God, like, is this real? Like, this can't be real. Right. And it's like a 3-hour course and now you're a certified breathwork instructor. That's not going to prepare you properly. And then the other side of that, side of that spectrum is 2 years and $20,000 of going through this training for 2 years. Well, it doesn't take 2 years in my experience. There's not like they're adding in all these things like ecstatic dance. Like ecstatic dance is great, but it has nothing to do with taking someone through a breathwork session safely. So there's a middle ground, which is where I feel like I land in, where my in-person training is 4 days long, and I will make sure you can lead someone through a session or a class safely. I give you a script, everything to say, and then we go over literally in real-time sessions. You're doing sessions with people, and like, these are the things that are going to come up, and this is how you deal with them. And this is what's going to come up, and this is how you deal with it. And so how you handle the situations and the things that arise in the room during a class or a session.
And I mean, I know prices change and everything. So this is 23rd of July 2026. So people can be listening to this in 10 years' time. But what's the price point?
Yeah, in person is if you get the early bird pricing, it's $3,500 for the certification, and that doesn't include the hotel and your flight and your meals. Obviously, that stuff. I don't do that because everybody has different dietary restrictions. I can't do.
It
You know what I mean?
becomes a job. Yeah.
Oh my God! I did it at one training in like Tulum, Mexico, and it's just like everybody's got a different diet issue. It's a nightmare. So you go out and you get your own food. I do it in a place that has all these different restaurants and supermarkets, and you can choose whatever. So the $3,500 is for the training. Online, I think it's on sale right now, I think for $2,000. And so it's much less expensive online. It's much cheaper online, right? But then you don't get the in-person, to sit there with me and ask me questions and to do sessions with people in there. That's sort of the downside of that. You're going to have to go do that on your own. So you don't get the real-time experience that you would get in person. However, I've had thousands of people do the online training, and now they're out there successfully leading people in breath work and without issue. No issues that I've known of have come up. So I think I've done a great job with my online training, preparing people and getting people to lead safely and effectively. The real key for me is like, if you can make someone safe in the room doing this work, then you can take them deep and they can have an experience. If they don't feel safe, then they're not going to go there, and it's not going to be a good experience for them. So it's really about the safety that they're feeling in the room, and also knowing, when to back off or when to push. That's kind of tricky, right? I have the tendency, because I used to be a trainer, to push a little hard in my classes, and I'll say, come on, you've done something harder in your life, Roy, than lay on the floor and breathe. You can do this. It's not that hard. So what I was doing when I first started doing this work is like, I brought the trainer into the room, and it worked really well because people need that push in the beginning of breathwork. The first 10, 15 minutes of breathwork is uncomfortable, and I don't like it, and it's weird, and my head is fighting me, and it's saying, don't do this and quit. And so they kind of need that push. And then the second half of my class, I like to kind of crack open people emotionally. So I'll say more emotional type language, where I'll say, everybody wants somebody to come and show up and love them for who they are, the way they are. But we don't often love ourselves for who we are, the way we are. We teach people how to love us. We show people how to love us by how we love ourselves. And how we love ourselves is how we show up for ourselves and do the uncomfortable work. Right now, this breathing right here, right now is self-love. It is self-care. Right here, right now, you are doing the work. You are doing self-care. Every breath is self-love. So I'll say things like that in my class to sort of crack people open emotionally. And I've been navigating that for 15 years. It's a dance. And I tell my students, like, you don't have to say anything. If you can just get people to breathe and keep them doing the breath work, they're going to have their own experience. Right? It's just about getting them to breathe. However, these are some tools that you can use to move the session in one direction or another.
And what about, because I think I did about 10 different types, different people, but they were always included in the event that you went to, so you was never paying for it. But like, not doing the course to be certified, but when people come, obviously you're at a different level because of all your experience and everything. So how much must a person pay per session when they come, not virtually, but in person? And then when someone's starting off, what's the kind of going rate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I get this question a lot in my trainings, and I want to make it affordable for people. So I charge less, but I get more people too than most people, right? So there's that side of it. I'll have students that do my training and they're charging double what I'm charging for a class or for a session. And I don't care. You know, for me it's not about the money, it's about helping people. I always say like the more people I help, the bigger my life becomes, the better my life is, and the money is a byproduct. I don't focus on the money. I focus on helping more people, as many people as I can. Now, with that said, I want to answer your question directly because I think it's fair. You know, my online class is $29, but your first time is $10 off. So it's $19, which I think is, you know, the price of a burrito these days, depending on where you are. Right. So $19 for your first breathwork class. And there's a 5-day replay afterwards. So you can do that 5 times. Right. My in-person class depends on the city. You know, if I'm here in Bend, Oregon, where I live, it's $45 because it's 5 minutes down the street from me. If I'm in Los Angeles, it's $65 because I have to get on a plane. The space is more expensive for me to rent. I have to pay a sound person. I have to pay for a gong person. So the expenses are much higher in Los Angeles. So I charge $20 more per person. I charge $65. So those are the rates. They go anywhere from $19 to $65 for a class.
And because, yeah, the gong
But I've
person,
seen students of mine charging $75 for an online class. Wow, that's a lot. Okay.
I mean, if it's working, if they're a bluff, you know, get it. And
You know, it's not about the money for me. I don't, you know.
yeah. But with the gong person, so like, is the facilitator able to do that, or do you have to have someone separate because you want to be kind of looking after them, watching the people and everything? Like, how many people's needed, and are you providing the music then as well? Because sometimes, like, I know some of them, some of breath is like a techno kind of breath music. They all have different kind of things.
Yeah, I can't stand when someone uses techno music. For me, it's awful. I want music that motivates me in the beginning of the class, and then in the second half of the class of the breath work, the active breathing, I want music that moves me emotionally. And techno just doesn't move me emotionally. It's not going to do what Landslide from Fleetwood Mac does. Like Landslide from Fleetwood Mac makes everyone cry. Fix You from Coldplay breaks everyone down. Right. And so those are the songs I use in my classes. I make a playlist for every single class I've ever done for the last 15 years. Most of them for the last 10 or 12, I think you can find on my Spotify, Breathe with JP on my Spotify. I have all my playlists for all my classes on there. And I use a lot of the same music because it works in a certain way for me. So I make the playlist. I've got a guy doing this music for me because the music will go up or down. There's gongs on either side of the room. I'm actually working one of the gongs. I've got somebody else working the other gong. And then I've got people in the room going around, students of mine that I've trained going around the room, checking on people, making sure they're okay. I used to do all of it. And then I discovered, like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Jon Paul? You can't be the DJ and the checking on people and saying everything and playing the gong. Like, I used to do it all by myself. I might do that for a small private class, you know, because I can do that, you know, but I don't do it for the big classes anymore. And I don't recommend it to my students. I tell my students, like, listen, if you've got more than 10 or 15 people, you've got to have somebody there helping you. You could do a class of 10 by yourself, but once you start to get over those numbers, you need help. You need someone else because you need to keep, you know, moving the whole class, and somebody might sit up with an issue and you need somebody to go address that for you.
With your online, then, for people that are doing it, is it pay as you go, or do you have kind of like a subscription monthly or yearly as well?
Yeah, I wish I did a subscription. I never did it, and there's a reason behind it, something to do with the music and all of that. So it's just pay as you go.
Okay.
Yeah, every week you pay, you know, $29. And I've had people that have been coming forever, for years. And now I'm doing an advanced breathwork class, and for my students that have been coming forever that want something a little longer, a little different. And there's some breath holds in there, and we're breathing for a longer stretch of time. And I don't do the whole 10-minute talk at the beginning about, you know, the things that can happen and all that stuff. This is for somebody who's done breathwork 10 times already, at least. right? So we're diving into other techniques and rhythms of breathing and different things.
Do you do, or have you seen people bringing it to corporations? Because I mean, we see, yeah, like smaller corporations, smaller companies, but a lot of ones that are doing bad. I mean, sometimes people are thinking, I mean, I've heard of people saying, yeah, if we could get them to do, the ayahuasca, then they'll actually realize about humanity and everything. But I think breathwork would do it, because when you don't see people, yeah, I mean, you mentioned yourself, sometimes you just have you can get angry and things like that, but I think you're way more controlled. You're more present during the moment when you're doing it. But is there people embracing it in corporations?
There are. I have some sort of, so I have enough experience now with different corporations to go like, first of all, I've had I've had owners kind of blindside their employees. Like they're at a corporate retreat and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to go do this breathing thing," and they don't know what it is. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I think they need to be prepared properly, because it can produce a big emotional result. And then now that person is having kind of a real emotional experience around their coworkers, and that's not fair. So I make sure that the people know what they're getting into, that they, know ahead of time. I find that, I've done it for Nike in person a few times. I've done it for LinkedIn online. I think it works better online for corporations, because you're in your home, you're in your safe space. This is why I started doing breathwork online. Like, you don't want to cry next to Janet from HR, right? It just doesn't work. Like, most people don't want to do that. So, so I think that the online space is really great for this, where, you can turn off your camera and you can be in your room and you can just have this big experience and you can let go. So I find that for corporations, it's tremendous online. But I will have this. So what happens a lot is I do a class and then some woman comes up to me after the class and she goes, "My husband would never do this, but I think he could do this with you because you're a guy. So I'm going to make him come." I go, "All right." And then the next class, I see the husband out in the audience and he's sitting there as I'm talking, and I can see him just going, "Oh my God, I can't believe she dragged me to this shit on a Friday night and I'm paying for this." And I can see him. He thinks it's all nonsense. He thinks it's all BS. And I'm like, "That's my guy. I'm going to crack that guy open." Because the beauty of this style of breathwork is you don't have to believe in it. If I can just get you to do it, you're going to have an experience. And ironically, the people who are like the most sort of shut down and keep it all in and don't talk about it and don't do therapy and don't do any stuff to work on yourself, those are the people who have the biggest experiences in my classes most of the time, right? They not that other people who work on themselves don't, but like people who hold it all in, it's unexpected and they have this big emotional release. And they come up to me afterwards and they go, "Oh my God, I can't believe that. I thought this was nonsense and I had such an incredible experience. Can I give you a hug?" And they start crying on me in the lobby, and it's incredible. And then it's like, this is the captain of the SWAT team, and he's like, "I'm going to make the whole SWAT team do it." I'm like, I don't think the SWAT team wants to have an emotional breakdown next to all the other SWAT team members that they need to have their back. Why don't we have them do it online? Like, let's do it online for the SWAT team guys.
And just curious, when you were doing Nike, when you were kind of doing the talking, did you tell them just do it?
That would have been too easy, I think. That class was actually funny because it was these inner city kids, athletes who had turned into Nike representatives. So most of them were like African American and sort of grew up in the inner city, and they were like former athletes, and they had just. This one class I'm thinking of, they had just come out of a seminar where this guy just talked at him for 3 hours straight. So, they're kind of restless and they're young, right? They're in their 20s and their 30s, and they come into this room with me, and there's nothing but towels laying on this floor. There's like, I think there was 200 of them. And I'm trying to get their attention, and I'm trying to do my presentation and saying, these things can happen, and they're goofing around and they're not really listening. It's like that movie Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer, right? And I'm like trying to get their attention. And finally I said, "Listen, you don't have to listen to me, but when you start crying like a little bitch, don't say that I didn't prepare you properly." And they're like, "Oh no, and then like all of a sudden I have their attention now. You have to know who you're working with, right? This is one of the things I teach my students. Am I working with like inner city, youth, or am I working with corporate executives? Who do I have in front of me? That's important. So I had to get their attention because I really wanted to prepare them properly for this class. And I did. And I was able to say, like, listen, you don't have to believe me this thing's going to work, but if you do it, you're going to have an experience. Tell me that I'm wrong afterwards. I want you to come up and tell me that I'm wrong afterwards, but you have to really go for it all out before you can say that. And they went for it, and they went hard because these were athletes. So they went super hard. I was like, oh man, I had to cut it back. I had to shorten the playlist of the class. And this is another thing I'll teach my students. Like sometimes you need to make it longer. Sometimes you need to make it shorter because they were all going so hard. They all had tetany, 15 minutes into the class. Every hand in the room was up in the air like this. And I said, oh geez, I got to pull this back a little bit. So I do that. And then afterwards, I do this thing where you reach out and you pull moments in your heart, moments of gratitude, moments of love from your life after the breathwork's over. And you know what? They lined up and they said incredible things to me. They told me about people that they lost and that they loved and that they missed, and that those people came in during their session and they had so much love and gratitude for those people, and that they came to them during the session. And so I've heard that so many times. It's never happened to me personally, but I've heard that every single class I've ever done for the last 15 years. So I know it happens, I know it happens. It hasn't happened to me. I've had other experiences which are pretty incredible, like, feeling connected to the universe and higher power and different things like God or whatever. And I don't share that very often because I don't want to set up that expectation for people, because it's different for everybody, right? And it's different every time you do it. So I like to let people have their own journey and experience without me setting up any expectations.
Yeah, excellent. And just finally, you've trained thousands who in turn are going out doing it, teaching a lot of people, and then they're training people. So the ripple effect is incredible. Which is great for humanity when there's more people. Have you seen any kind of like Netflix series or a movie or anything where there's breath work? Because that's what we needed to get to the kind of the masses. Like, is there any film or anything where they're actually showing it, or a documentary?
No, there needs to be a great documentary on it. I'm like, please, somebody do a documentary, and I would love to be in it. I'd love to do it. There was a show, right? So there's a show called Flaked, and it was in the second season with Will Arnett, right? And so Will Arnett's coming to my class at this time, and I'm watching the show, right, with him in it. And in the show, there's a breathwork instructor, and he starts making fun of this breathwork instructor and doing breathwork. But he's at my classes. So I said to him, there was a handful of us, that were going to dinner after the class. I said, you're making fun of a breathwork guy in the class, in the show, and you're doing the class. He's like, I know, it's life imitating art, art imitating life. I know, here I am, it's a show about relapsing, and I relapsed and all this kind of stuff, right? And so we're laughing. Will said one of the funniest things I've ever heard, which was, he'll go, I was doing the breath work and I'll be breathing, and then this song will come on. I'm like, why would he pick this song? And it's just like, you think like this song's terrible, and then all of a sudden it makes you like, you hear something in it and it just makes you break down and cry. And it's so true, right? For my classes anyways, I think. I don't know about techno music. I like to make fun of it for breath work. But there's an audience for it. I've gone to classes online and they're playing techno and there's 40 people in the class, and I'm like, okay, I guess people are into this.
I actually like it myself, but I've tried different ones. So I get totally different experiences. So.
Yeah, I think the thing for the techno where it could work is that it's got like a beat that you could kind of get into a rhythm with the breath work. So I can see that. Yeah. I can see that effect, because there is like some of the old school breathwork stuff is done with drumming. And so that could translate into the techno. For me personally, I want to be moved, and I want to move other people. And so for that to happen, I have to play music that moves me. And I really believe what comes from the heart goes to the heart. So when I allow myself to get vulnerable, I feel like this is my special sauce in my classes. I allow myself to get really vulnerable and I get emotional in my classes. And people can hear that coming through in my voice during the class. And that allows them to get emotional and release and open up. Because what comes from the heart goes to the heart. So if you hear my heart open up and you hear me get vulnerable, that gives you permission to do the same as well.
I'm just curious because, they've modified the frequency. I don't know, is it 440 is the bad one? It should be 434 or something. Forget it. But if you had like an orchestra with real music, with musicians and done it, I wonder how that experience would be.
I'm sure it'd be amazing. Yeah, it would be beautiful. I would be down for it. I would definitely love to try it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Jon Paul. You might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, my website is breathewithjp.com, BREATHE with WITHJP, not breath with JP, breathewithjp.com. And I have another website, Breathwork Teacher Training. That's for the online courses, but you can find that through breathewithjp.com. And I'm on all the social media things. My wife runs those accounts for me. I can't deal with it, but I do I make the videos and
if
she
you
does
start
all the
doing breathwork, you'll relax and you'll be able to manage it.
I did manage it for years, and now I'm just like, I can't. She'll tell me we have to make some videos for this and for that and the thing, and I'm like, oh god, okay, here we go, let's make the videos. And so I'm on all the things, all the social media, but the main website, if you want to do a class online or you want to come to a training, breathewithjp.com. And I always say, have an open mind, try something different, try someone different. You might like my style, you might not.
So listen, thoroughly enjoyed it, and make sure I put the links both on the audio and the video. So,
thank you, Roy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So that's all for the meditation podcast. You'll find other episodes on meditationpodcast.org. You'll find everything about me. Scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com. You find all my podcasts along with all the different businesses I'm doing. If you're looking for virtual assistance, go to va.world. Until next week, take care.
Interest rates and inflation are out of control. Is your credit card debt also out of control? It's time to resolve your debt and take back control for a lot less than what you owe. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, then you need to call us right now. Debt Fix Pros can significantly reduce the amount you owe, and you could be debt-free faster than you think.
I knew we had to do something. Our debt was growing.
It was getting out of control, and we just didn't know what to do.
We saw an ad for Debt Fix Pros. We called, and they showed us how fast they could get us out of debt.
It really was amazing, and now we're back in control.
Call now, and we'll show you how easy it is to fix your debt. The call and consultation are free. Call Debt Fix Pros right now.
Call 800-918-2199. That's 800-918-2199. 800-918-2199.